All right, before we can even get into this actual movie, I want to talk about like what genre this movie falls into because from what I see like on Twitter or YouTube, it just seems like people didn't get this movie.
Mhm. I
Would you
agree.
would you agree?
100%.
And
Nobody seemed there's some people, but not a lot. A lot of the louder people are the ones who are like, "I don't fucking get this movie."
I think I saw one like YouTube movie reviewer that I follow like one said that they loved this movie. Like they totally got it.
Yeah,
And this movie is a horror comedy, right?
I would agree with that. I don't think everyone would, but I think if you really get the movie, you would agree with that, but I was trying to also think about this last night when I was rewatching this movie, and that's why I was curious, like, what would be your definition of a horror comedy?
Okay, I can
'Cause
answer
mine's
this.
pretty loose, I feel.
You having loose standards for a ranking system.
And
We've
a lot
never.
of things. I'm
Okay,
just
well,
kidding.
you can say that.
Just say
Uh,
I'm loose, Chase. Just say what you wanna say, okay? Don't make me say it.
so
Yeah, what's your
I would
definition?
define horror comedy as it's very different than a parody. A parody is like Scary
Yeah,
Movie 2. Those are comedy movies that make fun of horror comedy.
not
I
necessarily any scares to them.
Correct. On the other end of the spectrum, I would say there's a difference between a horror comedy and a horror movie that has a sense of humor. Like
Mhm.
Scream, I feel like is a horror movie at first, but like it has some funniness, it's meta, it has some stuff to it.
See, yeah, but then I'm also like, mine's just more loose where I think if there's horror and there's comedy. But also I consider a lot of comedy or horror movies like or sorry, movies to be horror comedies like Ready or Not. I don't find it particularly scary,
Mhm.
but it's like I consider that a horror comedy, wouldn't you?
I don't know if I would consider Ready or Not a horror comedy. It's probably right on the line. So
Yeah.
my list that I came up with is very, very short. So horror comedy to me it is a horror movie that makes fun of itself. So it's camp.
Intentional or not? Does that matter?
Intentional. Camp
Yeah,
has to be
you have to be
intentional. Like
intentional, right? People just assume nowadays if it's bad that that's camp. It's like, no, they have to try.
camp camp is a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna know what's on yours,
Yeah,
though.
it's really semantics. But yeah, like I think the movie itself is part of the joke for a horror comedy. So like my movies are Tusk.
I agree. I also think that's a perfect horror comedy.
Yeah. Tusk, Cabin in the Woods,
Yep, I have that too.
Evil Dead slash Army of Darkness.
I have Evil Dead 2 because I think that one is the perfect mix. I think Evil Dead 1 doesn't have as much comedy as,
Y-
like,
Yeah.
and then I think the 3rd one,
Army of
Army of
Darkness.
Darkness, that one's, like, all comedy. So it's like, yeah.
I would agree. The first one is just an old school horror movie. Yeah, the second one
Yeah.
it definitely goes funny. And then
Yeah.
the last one, I mean, besides Malignant, I did this for you, Piranha 3D. I think that is a good horror comedy.
Very good. Yeah, I totally agree.
What's on your list?
I'll just start from the bottom of, like, here's movies that I consider horror comedies, and then I'll get up to my tops. But there I won't go too long, don't worry, there's not too many. Like, I'm gonna sit here for 20 minutes reading off movies, guys, okay? Just relax. Tremors and Scream and Jennifer's Body. I love that movie. Snakes on a Plane, I think works. It's more comedy, but it does have, like, some I mean, I'm freaked out by snakes, so maybe I'm just easy to scare. I haven't seen this one, but I did see it when I was, like, looking up different movies. It was Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That seemed to be, like, a pretty popular one. Eight-Legged Freaks I have on there, along with Arachnophobia, because that one is actually a very funny movie, and it's like a comedy, but it also has, like, really scary spider shit, so that one's a little bit more extreme. One of my favorites, Krampus, I think is maybe one of the best more recent ones. Lake Placid and Piranha I have there because they both are very similar. Like, I'm pretty sure in Lake Placid, like, the villain is, like, Betty White, right? Because she's, like, feeding the fucking croc with
Wait,
cows all the time, and her husband.
is this the Lake Placid versus Anaconda?
No, no, that's, like, the first Lake Placid, shockingly enough. And then I had Evil Dead 2 and Tusk. The Final Girls, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but Happy Death Day, I thought would be in your list as well. And Freaky. This Is the End and Shaun of the Dead were another couple ones that I just wanted to include. And then now for my finalists.
Oh, now we're at the finalist.
Now we're
Okay.
at the finalists. Okay.
A real exclusive list.
This is, yeah. Well, no, I just feel like I had to mention those or else like people might get mad if they like, those are all really good ones and I just feel like they all count. My top 5, I would say You're Next,
Mm.
Cabin in the Woods. Then I have Ready or Not and Malignant at number 2, and then number 1 now is Nope because I think that
Um,
movie is a very really delicate balance of both cuz I have not laughed that hard in a movie in a long time and also been that fucking terrified. So it shot to the top of my list. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time now. I would put Malignant up there though, and I was trying to decide, like, I think if you just maybe don't understand the movie, you're not sure why it fits in this category. But for me, I think it's 100% a horror comedy. It has the perfect mix. But maybe that's sometimes why they're controversial or people either love them or hate them. Like I feel like all these movies on this list people are kinda split on.
Totally. So, yeah, I mean, before we get into the actual like spoiler part of this movie, because I mean, there is zero way to talk about this movie without spoilers.
If
So,
we were not gonna include spoilers, I wouldn't be here.
yeah,
There's so
there,
much to mention.
this is one of those rare movies where like there's nothing to talk about unless you can talk about spoilers. So,
Yeah, like, that's what makes the whole movie, but before we get there, we can
yeah,
finish this, like that's what I was just meaning is that it's controversial maybe because some people I think horror comedy is really hard for people to either grasp and also for movies to do really well.
yeah, 100%. And also, it's not a it's not a genre that particularly like studios want to invest in,
Yeah,
you know?
'cause it's hard to get fucking right.
And that was one of the things with Malignant is it was marketed as a horror film. Like it was
Mhm.
marketed as James
Like,
Wan,
The
The
Conjuring,
Conjuring, and all of it. And
Insidious. Like, I literally thought it was gonna be like that.
like everything you see in the trailer is I don't know, probably the first 30 minutes of the movie, which is
Mhm.
like but
Exactly.
so I'm gonna go on a quick little tangent here.
Perfect, I'm here for it.
I did some spreadsheeting. I did some research and James Wan, I think, is the only director that could have pulled this movie off because they had no clue how to market this movie. They're just like, James Wan horror, let's just do that.
I think that that was actually intentional by James Wan. He wanted it marketed that way. I read a lot about this movie after I saw it because you'll understand after you see it, but, yeah, I read that and I was like, "Interesting choice," because I find that that's, like, the biggest hang up for people nowadays is trailers being either, like, too spoilery or misleading, but a lot of people are doing that with movies.
The only reason I don't know if I agree with you on James Wan being a part of it is because he posted on social media like, do not expect this to be like The Conjuring, but
Oh, he
like they
did?
yeah, they like marketed it as The Conjuring.
I thought that that was, like, on purpose because he wanted to throw people off. I thought it was, like, a smart move because it seemed like that would also I mean, if they marketed this movie for what it was, I don't know how many people would even watch because 'Cause they'd be like, "What the fuck?" Or maybe it would have drawn drawn 'em in. I don't fucking know, but I do feel that, like, maybe they were also like, "Yeah," the studio was like, "This'll get us more money," but then also he was like, "Yeah, but then maybe it'll even be better because you have no idea what's coming," and that's kind of the
Maybe.
best way about to watch this movie. So maybe it's a little bit of both.
Maybe. But either way, so like I I went in and I looked at how much money James Wan is responsible for in the horror franchise, horror world. I think James Wan is without any competition, he is the king of horror. It's not saying anything about the
Agreed.
quality of his movie or other people's movie, just sheer dollars.
But he
Okay?
also knows what people want,
He
what they
he
like.
he does. He started the Saw franchise, the Insidious franchise, the Conjuring franchise. The only other like big franchises that aren't listed here is like The Purge and Paranormal Activity.
And those are both dead in the water now. Nobody gives a fuck about either of those. I mean, I know they're still pumping out those fucking
Yeah.
Purge movies, but enough, okay? We
I
don't
mean,
care.
well, and like all of these franchises, James Wan's not involved in them anymore. He's the executive producer. He's just cashing checks.
He's, like, helping out, but yeah, he's just producing a lot of stuff. He's very busy, you know? And he also made Aquaman
Yeah.
money.
So I'm saying just the horror world. I mean,
Yeah.
Aquaman, that's a whole other
He's the
tangent. But
king of Warner Brothers, I think, after both all of this, if put together, I
yeah,
think we could say he basically, like, dominates that. He's, like, their biggest money maker.
100%. I'm going to prove it. Okay.
I'm
So
ready for it.
James Wan, within those three franchises, the horror world, and this is all the Conjuring spinoffs because he gets credited back to all of them. Okay. He has brought in worldwide over 3.6 billion with a B billion dollars.
$1,000,000,000. That's all I was thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's insane. Holy shit.
That's not even the craziest part. Okay.
It
There's
gets
a
crazier.
It does.
Oh, shit.
There's a lot of movies in this list that a lot of people haven't seen. Like all of the spin-offs and stuff, like they're
Hit
not
me
good.
with it.
The stuff that James Wan is directly involved with, they're great. The budget for all of those movies, so 3.6 billion in revenue, the budget for all of those was $305 million. Warner Brothers, just in gross numbers, has 12x'd their investment in James Wan. Like James Wan has
Yeah.
created the most successful money-making machine ever. For comparison, okay?
Marvel?
Marvel,
Yeah.
the first Iron Man movie. So here, let's do this. The first Saw
Okay.
was a $1.2 million budget.
Very low budget.
1 million. The budget of Iron Man was $140 million.
Exactly.
Iron Man grossed almost $600 million. Saw grossed over $100 million. Saw had an 87x return, whereas Iron Man had a 4x return.
Because they have to spend so much money
So
on
much
all
money.
these fucking movies. That's why they're getting all this. They're like killing those fucking VFX people now. It's horrible. They're not
Like,
literally murdering them, but they're throwing in too much at them. They're too much because they have to produce so much shit to make up the costs.
yeah.
Whereas with horror and James Wan, he like knows how to like use a low budget. He's done it for like most of these horror franchises that he started. The first one was
Mhm.
pretty low budget, like out of all of these ones. And I feel that he's also bringing up cool filmmakers and having them do like the spin-offs and guiding them and like working with all these new and interesting people in this horror field. And it's just a minefield.
The movies that James Wan was directly involved with, directing or writing, the budget for those, other than the first two Conjuring movies, the budget for those was no more than 5 million.
Yeah.
And they all did over 100 million in box office. The Conjuring was 20 million and 40 million, and those did those did 300 million at the box office.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are worth the extra budget. By that point, they were like, I think this guy we could give him a little bit more money. He's clearly paying us back well above what we're paying him. So
Like this is the entire reason that the horror genre like just survives. Like the horror genre has the most insane ROIs possible.
what's an ROI?
Return on investment.
Okay, sorry. I know I'm like I am a business person too, but there's so many fucking acronyms out there now.
The craziest one of all time, it's not James Wan related, is Paranormal Activity.
Yep.
That movie was made on a $15,000 budget,
Oh, I know.
and it did almost 200 million
Mhm.
in box office. That's almost 13,000x.
That's why they're still trying to make those fucking movies.
Yeah, that's why there's like 7 of them.
Yeah.
It's
They got
insane.
old real quick, but
But so
well, what about Blair Witch was obviously before that and also probably super low budget like that too.
I didn't look that one up, but it probably
Yeah.
did really well.
But these ones, it's easy with horror, I feel like, to do a real low budget movie, but make it really, if it's well done, it can make a shit ton of fucking money. Literally,
Yes.
superhero movies and horror movies make a ton of money right now.
Yeah.
Still, they always do, I think.
I mean, the first Saw movie was in 2004, and the last one, including Spiral, was 2021.
Oh, yeah.
They've been busting out Saw movies for 20 years, and they're still making a 10x on that franchise.
Yet they're making a new one going back with like, it's like combining I don't know if it's characters from I don't think it's characters at all from The Spiral, but, like, some of the team that worked on that will be also working on a new one, focusing more on the actual guy who played on the actual Jigsaw character again.
God.
But I thought I don't remember what happened with those movies. I went and saw all of them in theaters,
Oh yeah,
but
I've seen them all, and it's insane how
it's
bad
because
those
that
movies are,
first one
and
is
they're
so good.
successful.
The
Yeah,
the greatness of the first one keeps you coming back for more because 'cause you're always like, "This is it could be that good." I mean,
yeah,
no doubt it won't be, but, like, you
it's
have that
nuts.
hope. He's great at starting these things.
Like all this to say, *Malignant* is the most unsuccessful movie that James Wan has made in terms
Yeah,
of box office. It also happened during the coronavirus, so theaters shut down. So like it did like 34 million.
on a 40 million budget, right?
This movie, like just looking at it, it's almost like James Wan, like he was owed this movie. The movie he wanted to use, like, I've made you guys so much money. Just
Mhm.
fucking give me this. Let me do it.
This is legit what happened, I was going to mention, but, literally the reason that this movie got made, which, like, this
Yeah.
would never be made by a fucking studio ever, especially, like, with this much of a budget, but he literally had just made them, like, over
Hmm.
$1 billion with Aquaman, and they wanted him back for Aquaman 2 to lock him into that, and he said, "I'll do Aquaman 2 if I get to do one for me." And they said, "Okay, we'll do whatever," and, like, they gave him a great budget, and he fucking made this movie that was just a love letter to horror movies that he loved and a style that he loved, and I just think, "Fuck yeah." I
Yeah.
hope that they continue to do it with him because he deserves making one for the people, one for him. Because 'cause I'm here for both of those kind of movies. Whatever he does, I honestly
For
just am here for.
agreed. I mean, Aquaman wasn't my favorite movie in the world, but
Yeah.
I love James Wan.
No,
Yeah.
but it was a moneymaker, so and I love it now because that's why we have *Malignant*, so sure, it might be my second favorite movie now because if it gave us *Malignant*, that is putting it up in my book, okay? I won't rewatch it, but
Let's get into actually talking about this movie. So this is your final spoiler alert. There's no way to talk about this movie going forward
turn
without
back
talking
now.
about the ending. All right. So let's actually talk about the movie. Let me give you the plot. So the I yeah,
Good
the
luck with that.
IMDb plot is Madison, the main character, is paralyzed by shocking visions of a grisly murder, and her torment worsens as she discovers that these waking dreams are, in fact, terrifying realities. Now, that is the IMDb plot. Let me tell you my plot. Okay.
I'm
A
excited for this.
weirdly basic horror movie that you realize when it's too late, it's a ruse. And James Wan is about to rock your world. This is your final spoiler alert. If you have not seen this movie, get the fuck out.
Or I would like to also say, if you are like me and sometimes and you don't have to admit it, but I get it, you like to know the spoilers before you see a movie. I have anxiety too, people. I get it. Okay. So I want to include that
Okay.
because I never hear that on podcasts. But if you want to hear the spoilers, I get it. You're welcome here too. Don't
Oh,
feel
so much
shame.
love right
Okay.
there for the listeners.
I'm just saying that there's gotta be somebody else like that, and if I heard that on a podcast, I would be like, "Thank God somebody finally," because I feel like I'm always like, "Oh shit, I'm listening when I shouldn't be."
This is like one of the only movies I can think
But
of
this is one of the
that
movies,
is
yeah.
like the twist ties the entire insanity that you watch together. And like it's not like spoiler is like an understatement in terms of this.
Yeah, like, I will say that I also like, I do look up spoilers for movies, but not for every movie, because I do believe that, I didn't look them up for Nope, and I did not look them up for *Malignant* because I was told not to for both. Like, I mean, obviously, it kinda just goes with Jordan Peele, but people I wasn't thinking, like I was like, "Oh, yeah, I totally would have looked up *Malignant* because it's like, oh, like, a Conjuring spinoff kinda thing, whatever." But everybody in the early reactions were like, don't read a fucking thing about this movie. Just hang in there till the last, like, 40 minutes. And I was like, I am now very interested because this looked like a real run-of-the-mill fucking movie.
Yeah, the one thing I would tell people kind of in hindsight with this. I wouldn't spoil the movie, but I would tell you if you feel like you're supposed to laugh, you are.
It's okay to laugh throughout the whole movie.
It is intentional. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of this movie.
It's its beauty and its curse, I think, because it's caused a lot of people to not get it or not enjoy it, and that's really why we had to pick it and talk about it because, you guys might get here in, like, 30 years, but Jason and I will have been here this whole time in the Malignant Hive. We'll get to that later, but just wanted to
Activate.
say, yeah, welcome. This is the Malignant discussion.
The thing that stood out to me, just like without spoilers, is
I thought we were past the
we are
spoilers.
past the spoilers, but it's a weirdly basic movie up until the
Yeah.
moment. It's a pretty standard movie. I don't know, would you agree?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what yeah, I would say for what you're expecting, like, you get that, but it's also, like, a little bit extra.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think it's also it seems like a typical, like, ghost story and ghost movie for a lot of, like, the movie, right? It seems like a standard, like, demonic possession, imaginary best friend who turns out to be a murderous ghost of some sort, or ghoul, or some other
We've
supernatural
never
shit.
seen those.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many of those because guess what? They're fucking scary. Okay, they're easy to be scary. But they they work, and so people make a ton of them. This one just looks like another one. I only went into this movie to see it like the day it came out. I mean, granted, I didn't go to the theater. I'm sorry. HBO Max, any of those movies, I'm like, okay, then I'm staying home.
I can stay home
It's
and
like
not spend $30 at the theater. Awesome.
exactly. Yeah, like, what? Okay, and I could pause the movie to go to the bathroom because that's my biggest problem nowadays. And not to say that, like, I can't make it through a movie, but, like, man, my bladder has been killing me lately at every Marvel movie. But anyways, yeah, so with this movie, it's like I only went to see it or I only was like, "I need to watch it the same day because it's James Wan." That was all that I was like, "Okay, that's the only thing it has going for it." Other than that, it looks like that. And then I was, like, laughing throughout it, but it was like I kind of felt like, "Oh my god, I don't know, like, should I be laughing? I'm not sure." You kind of
Yeah.
this movie gives off this vibe where it's like it's very run of the mill, like, I was like, "Oh, this is such a stereotypical plot for a movie," you know? Oh, the pregnant wife, she's a nurse, she helps people every day, and she has an abusive husband, and he beats her, and then she loses the baby, and she's lost 5 babies already, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, this is, like, the most" it's like a soap opera level of drama, and I think that's where maybe people have a disconnect. What do you think?
You're 100% right. Like this movie has so many tropes to it,
Mhm.
and I'm someone who to steal from one of my favorite movies, V for Vendetta.
I need to watch that
It's
again.
great.
You Brent mentioned it a lot, and it's a great
He has a
movie.
line. He says, "Like God, I don't play with dice, so I don't believe in coincidence." This movie has so many tropes in it that I don't think it's coincidence. I think it's very immaculately crafted, and that's kind of
Mhm.
the weird thing of it. The movie it has kind of like a B movie kind of feel to it. Like there's nothing original about the story. Like the camera work is incredible. It's James Wan to the max, but like the story itself, there's a lot of kind of like familiar stuff. Like there's not really a lot of original things. Do you get that vibe?
I get it too, and that's what people are like, it's basically like this movie, or it's basically like this plot, or like you've seen a lot of this stuff before. And I will agree, but that's like the point. It's pulling from all this stuff, but it's also like it's pulling from all the familiar shit, but it's really just trying to it still does something new with it. It's a combination of all of it, but it's like, it's kind of like Stranger Things where it takes so much stuff from things that are familiar and that you really like, right?
Hmm.
And it mixes them all together. Granted, that's more of like, they're doing it's more of a combination of like Stephen King and Steven Spielberg, which most people love both of those, like their
Yeah.
stuff, right? So it's like, cool, this is a lot of goodness, but like James Wan is pulling from some questionable sources, and that's what's great about
Yeah.
it. Is he's pulling from schlocky movies, so it's extra schlocky on purpose. It's like, but it's just like a big old like it's a long con of a movie is what it is.
it
That's what I've realized. It's the longest like con. Like it's like it's playing a joke on you from the beginning because you're not in on it until like the last like what 45
it's
minutes.
not even that. I clocked it. The moment it
Really?
happens is an hour 26 in, and there's about 15 minutes left of the movie.
Wow. I mean, and that's so true. So you're right. It is like the majority of the movie you have to like be on board with. I feel like for that to pay off, or you just have to like enjoy. I feel like everything comes together at that moment and makes everything work
Uh-huh.
in retrospect.
It makes everything work, and it also is totally jarring.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's funny, like, rewatching it. I think this is, like, the 3rd or 4th time I've watched it now, like, so, like, the horror movie tropes
Rookie numbers.
the horror movie tropes, like, stand out to me, but just, like, the camera work and everything, like, there's so much, like, thought and, like, heart put into this movie. I'm like, this
Mhm.
is the most well, like, thought out con ever. Like, everyone is 100% committed to the bit. Like, regardless
Yeah.
of whether or not it works, everyone's committed the entire movie.
Exactly, and I think that, like, that's where people get the confusion because, like, this is, like if you think of it as just, like, it's a fucking B movie, right? It's a B horror movie, which it just looks really nice, and it also, like, is directed so well that it really, I feel like, works that, like, it makes people think it's trying to be better than it is. I think they get confused, and they think it's trying to be serious because you do kinda get a lot of David Fincher vibes with, like, the opening credits of the movie is, like, something
Yeah,
straight out of Seven. Like, I mean, it's the
totally.
same thing, and then the big, long chase scene with the detective chasing Gabriel, that was exactly like the fucking chase scene with Brad Pitt and Kevin Spacey, which was also in the rain, in the dark, and, like, these weird and it went on forever, and it was the same fucking thing, although Gabriel's doing, like, Matrix level shit in this movie, but so there's a little difference, but you know what I mean? It kind of gives off the same style, and the filmmaking's so high quality that because it looks so good and because it's done so well, people think it's trying to be like an A level, A tier movie, but it's like, this is like trying to be a B movie from the get-go,
Yeah, and it
right?
and on, like, the twist, at the end, one thing that I think this movie that makes it really stand out from some of the other movies that we listed in our horror comedy movies is they kind of reveal the twist, like, the humor part of it, like Cabin in the Woods. You see what's going on halfway through the
Early
movie.
on. Yeah, like, you see but or you see the, like, clips of the guys, the scientists, but you have no context for a while, and
Yeah,
then you finally get, like but they do kind of incorporate it more and more into the movie, but it's still jarring as
but
well.
none of them are holding out until the last 15 minutes of the
Yeah.
movie. Like,
I mean, that's like a bold fucking strategy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, I mean, it also pays off, like, incredibly, like, well, because if you, like I mean, I personally think it's cool when filmmakers take risks in general, or when they make a baller move. Regardless of if they pull it off,
yeah,
I'm like, "You know what? They really fucking did something different." They at least went balls to the wall, and I will say that James Wan, regardless of what you think, I think we can all agree, he took balls to the wall and gave it a new definition, I think.
he gave the ultimate compliment to his audience of, like, they're gonna get it. They're gonna follow
Exactly.
along with this hour-long joke because he leaves hints.
Yeah, there's laugh out loud moments for a long time before you get to the last 15 minutes, let me
I
just
have a
tell you.
whole list of notes that as I was watching, I was like, "Signs that James Wan is fucking with you." And
Exactly.
the obvious thing is just constant horror tropes. Like, we are talking
So many.
yeah, we are talking about one of the most iconic horror film directors of all time. So, when we're talking about weird generic things in a horror movie, we have to remember who's doing this horror movie. So, here's my list of signs that James Wan is fucking with you, okay? All of the horror movie tropes. First one, it's very obvious. The main character is haunted.
Exactly.
There's a never-ending list of horror movies where the main character has something that is
Traumatic in the past,
yeah.
she's had some trauma event, now she's got like, it seems like a haunted invisible friend is kind of what you get from the trailers and from, like, the first 15 minutes or whatever,
Yeah.
right? That's
It,
like
it,
it starts off that way, and you're like, okay, yeah, I guess I've seen this before, huh?
oh,
Geez, how many times now?
and
And also in this universe.
totally. And it just like kicks off all the theories of like, oh, maybe she's the killer. Maybe
Mhm.
it's her. Maybe it's not an imaginary friend. Also, real quick side note, this movie had all of the horror genres in it at some point. Like this movie has supernatural horror, it has slasher horror, monster horror, possession horror, and there's even a little asylum horror.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Start off the movie.
Also, that asylum, it's the first thing we see. That's the most
Yeah.
ridiculous,
Oh, it's so sinister looking,
menacing
yeah.
looking thing I've ever seen.
Creepy thing,
That's the
yeah.
first sign this movie's fucking with you. Is that is
Yeah.
that thing?
Like, could they have made a, like, creepier fucking building? I don't think so. Unless they were like, "Hey, this place is haunted," like, had written across the front, like, as if you can't fucking tell. Like, whatever's going on in there, they really nailed the, like, this is supposed to be creepy.
Yeah. Well, and then the whole opening bit.
Mental hospital, creepy, screaming. You don't see a lot too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you don't see a lot, but like for
Like,
me,
there's gore,
yeah,
but
there's some gore. For me, it was kind of like this is so intense. Like it
Mhm.
seemed outdated. Like movies don't have opening scene, like monster scenes where it's just like you haven't seen that since Alien or something. It's just like it's alive. We gotta tranquilize it. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
It's time. We cut out the cancer.
this is so over the top. It's hilarious. Like
Yeah.
if you didn't get the nudge from the opening bit that this is kind of funny, then like lighten up. The movie's
It
supposed to be funny.
then you kind of transition into, like, soap opera
Oh
territory,
yeah.
which is another way that it gets like, "Hey, he's fucking with
Yeah.
you," right? Is that your next one on the list? Because I feel like that's another good
So
point.
my next he's fucking with you. And this one to me was like this is the first like obvious he's fucking with you is the I'm adopted reveal.
Mom told me that my biological mother died during my birth. Sydney, I'm adopted.
I
Yeah.
laughed I laughed out loud, like laughed my
Me
ass
too.
off when I saw that. I'm like, no shit.
Yeah. It's literally the perfect combination of them taking it so seriously, the music cue really loud right there, and then also, like, the way that she just says it, like, it's so, like, the most shocking thing in the world, and then the sister, like, looking at her with her eyes, like, as big as possible, like, so shocked. I mean, it's like, okay, this is a soap opera now. Like, this is even too much for a soap opera. You're like, "This is, like, hilarious." Like, obviously, and I guess maybe some people think, "Oh, is that on purpose?" I think it's just he's trying really hard, and I'm like, have we not all seen James Wan's movies? Like, I think we can all agree he's smart
Yeah.
and he knows what he's fucking doing. Let's give it to the guy. Let's trust him. I think he knows what the fuck he's up to.
Yeah, like the funny parts and the disconnection of stuff is so obvious that it's just like this doesn't James Wan is known for his attention to detail. So it's like this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. And this what ties to what you're saying, like with it kind of being a B movie, in that like
Mhm.
there's so many things not explained in this movie, and it's because it's intentional. Like none of Gabriel's abilities make any sense.
No, but again, at that point, if you're questioning this movie once you've seen Gabriel's full reveal, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You need to let this movie do what it does and let it happen to you. That's really the first thing. Let it all happen cuz it's going to be wild.
Jesus, take the wheel. Like this, you're here for a good time. This is
Yeah. And it's like Gabriel alone is like so creepy and yet fucking awesome too. And it's like such a nasty, like so much gore in this movie, but it's like 80s gore. This movie is basically like an homage to 80s B movies. A lot of different filmmakers, a lot of different like kind of influences and some other years too, but like that's a lot of this movie and it like knows what it's doing on purpose is the thing.
totally. And the like not explaining
Yeah.
his powers thing.
Oh, yeah. How does he do technology? I don't understand. He's like got the shine, but it's just for technology. I don't know. How does he make phone
That's
calls?
just a throwback to iconic horror
Yeah.
people like Freddy Krueger. Why is he in dreams?
Yeah.
Who knows? But he does it.
Nobody exactly. They don't give any fucking example. You're right.
Jason Voorhees doesn't have to run. He can just teleport, apparently.
And also, how does he keep coming back? And like at the end of the first one, he's like a fucking kid, and then the next movie, he's like all grown up.
My,
There's no explanation between movies,
Mike
really.
Myers, he's
Michael
sorry.
Myers, come on, it's not Austin Powers. You do this every time. You got to watch Halloween Kills.
Michael Myers, he's survived what, like being electrocuted, drowning, stabbing, being lit on fire. He survived everything.
Oh, that guy, yeah, he's like that's why they call him the Phantom or the Shape.
And
Sorry, he just can't be killed.
they haven't revealed that he has the Captain America super soldier serum thing, and but like that explains they just haven't revealed it yet. But
it's exactly, it's like when I'm watching like Malignant and whenever Gabriel's controlling shit. I mean, for the first half of the movie, you think it's like a ghost or a
yeah,
spirit. So you're like, okay, it doesn't like make you question it until you get the reveal of Gabriel. And by that point, I was just so delighted. I'm not gonna fucking question this movie now. I'm really enjoying what's happening and I don't really care because holy shit, like I am so into what I'm watching that I really didn't have time to like deconstruct whatever was going on. I was just like, holy fucking shit for like the last 15 minutes.
this is
Straight.
the only movie that I have gone out and actively sought the behind the scenes footage because
Mhm.
it's amazing. Like the whole doing things in reverse, like seeing that they used contortionists to create, like
Yeah.
practically create that. I'm like, this is incredible. Like when I watch it, I was like, how
Yeah.
did they play this in reverse?
They do everything practically and it's insane because that's the coolest thing because that's it's great because it's like I feel that now that you've seen X, like X is very similar where it's done in a way that like it feels like a movie
Yeah.
from the 70s. And like this is done in a way that like this is how movies did things in the fucking 80s. They used a lot of practical
Yeah.
effects like all the time. And that's one of the reasons that I've honestly really come to love. I used to be like scared of like the body horror from the 80s because I was like, oh God, it just seemed so gross. But like you remember when I first saw The Evil Dead and I like almost threw up halfway through. I just feel like it was so nasty. I was like, what the fuck? But now I watch it and it's like no big deal because I'm just like a psychotic person at this point, I guess. But I feel like this movie, like, I don't know. I love that shit.
Yeah,
I'm
so
here
like
for it.
there's the whole
It's 80s.
totally 80s. And there's so much of the stuff that's like totally familiar to us, but it's laced
Mhm.
in with all of this really incredible stuff. Like the way James Wan like films things, like his cinematography, like going up the stairs chasing after the main character, or like the eagle eye,
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
robot arm grabbing a stuffed animal toy camera thing, like
Mhm.
like it was just amazing with this totally unoriginal plot. Like it was like that's what keeps you engaged. And then the villain, you're like,
Yeah.
oh great, another like slasher villain. And then like you see him kill the person for the first time, you're like, are they backwards? Why are they moving like that? Like
Yeah.
there's these little
Oh, it's
just like
incredible.
Salt Bay sprinkles of originality that you're just like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that's like the biggest reason that people don't understand this movie is that it's made so well and it's directed so well and like some of its influences and styles are like associated with movies that are like
Mhm.
top tier, right? Whereas this movie is like that same quality, but it's like trying to be a schlocky B horror movie, which not everybody loves. I'll grant them that. But if you understand that going into it, I feel like it really changes your mind about things because, especially like, yeah, it seems like a stupid supernatural horror, but like, once you see the ending and you know that Gabriel and her are the same
Literally.
fucking person, you go back and rewatch it and you're like, oh my God, it just gets better. And then you also understand more of the jokes that you might have missed the first time because it's all a little jarring. And I think this is one that, like, it's basically just the highest budget for a fucking B movie that we've ever seen. It's the best made B
This
movie of
this
all
kind of
time.
reminds me of of a separate conversation we've had about why we love A24 horror movies, because
Yeah, because they always
like
look so great.
A24 has very like simple storylines, but like it's almost like what a B horror movie could be if they had budget, if they
Mhm.
had a really creative lead to it. And it's kind
Yeah.
of sad that Warner Brothers, it's like, hey, the only way we do this movie is if you've made us almost $4 billion in revenue.
That's the thing, is that, like, it's hard to do, like, original
Mhm,
horror nowadays. Well, sorry, people always say that there's not a lot, but it's like, if you look at it, like, that stuff is actually really
mhm.
popular every time it comes out. People want that, and people are always complaining about how there's not enough of it, but I'm like, yeah, maybe a few years ago, sure. Like, there was, like, maybe during 2020 when this came out, and I feel like maybe if it came out this year when we've had, like, The Black Phone, that's not a franchise thing. X is brand new. Granted, we also have enjoyed movies like Scream, the new one and stuff like that. There's also franchise horror movies that come out that are great, but people are still like, Freaky is another great one that I think did well and people loved it because it's new, but it's like, I just feel like if you like horror movies in general, you're welcome to, like, a franchise option and a new original option. Like, you just really can't go wrong. But I think that there's always that craving for something original. And this movie is nothing if not original. I think he uses familiar ingredients and makes something new out of them, which is really fucking hard to do because people have been using these same ingredients to not the same results for a very long time, I would say. Like, just watch any horror movie on Tubi that, like, you've never heard of and you'll understand.
The next thing on my list was just how much they talk about or even literally say like it's all in the main character's head. So like it transitions from her being haunted to there's a slasher murderer to you're crazy, you're somehow involved like they lay it on so thick that it should just be like, okay, this is too much. The the next this was
Totally.
part of my list of things of like, okay, this is a exclamation point red flag that this is a comedy. When they have the fight scene, when we see reverse parkour down the ladder and then they chase them, they're like crab crawling backwards through like the old.
I mean, it was incredible to watch. Yeah, again, knowing what
It's the
happens. It's
fight
great.
scene when they get into the basement with the cars and there's fog. Why would there be fog down there? Like
Again, that is, like, another thing that you're like, "Huh, where did that come from? Did they start the cars and they're just, like, letting the aren't they gonna die if that keeps going?" Like, you're not the thing about this movie is you cannot be questioning at any point what is going on. If you're clocking that stuff, which, like, Nolan does, he's always like, "Oh, clock that the second it fucking happens." But it's, like, just because he's, like, ready for it to come back and, like, scream in his face. But he's like, most of these movies, I feel like, or most of this movie, you just gotta let it happen. You can't be thinking too hard about it and questioning the logic, because let me tell you, there's none. Just accept it and enjoy it, because it's better if you do. If you have a good sense of humor, I feel like you should be able to just let it let it wash over you and enjoy yourself.
I'm just saying this is my list of if you're not catching on, by now you should have, but here's your signs, okay?
Yeah. I guess I'm just getting mad at the hypothetical people who haven't caught on at this point. Like, how have you not caught on? And it's at the fog in the fucking basement. Although, thank God if that's what gets you, because some people clearly didn't catch on at all.
I did feel like this movie was really just James Wan flexing like I've conquered
Yeah,
horror. Let me show you what else I can do. I don't know if I can do
yeah.
superhero movies quite yet, but I can do this.
I mean, he has like a billion reasons to
I
fight
guess
that
that is
answer that you
valid.
just said, because I think he can do it. Granted, for DC, okay, we'll give him that. And again, I don't think that that's all on him. I think Warner
I
Brothers has
agree.
issues with that.
We got Malignant.
We got Malignant out of it. Again, I won't go back and rewatch it. You can't make me, but I'm happy that we got Malignant.
Also, I thought it was really funny that this movie takes place in Seattle.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like a thing with horror movies, and maybe this is more the B movie thing, they take place somewhere, but like it really could take place anywhere. I think Seven is the best movie that has an unspecified place that
That's what I was gonna
that
say,
the
that I love
place
that about
has
it.
a personality, has a contribution to the movie.
Yeah, I also really love that it was set in Seattle. I think it wasn't like I think on purpose, it wasn't really like super specific to Seattle. Like they have, the obligatory shots of the Space Needle. And I thought the one part that was well done though was the Seattle Underground. Cause that like I feel like in my mind I've only done that tour once, a long ass time ago. And I was so scared the whole time that I'm pretty sure like whatever, like that's the scene in this movie is what happened to me. Cause it's like it's so dark down there, it's freaky. You're down in like a cave, basically, it feels like. I mean, it's just horrifying. And I thought that that scene was really effective. And I was like, hey, I recognize like that's exactly what it
Yeah.
looks like down there. And it's freaky as hell, you know? Perfect setting for a horror
Yeah.
movie scene. That's all I felt.
It's so funny. I think it's part of the joke. Like it shows the landscape shots of the Space Needle.
Like every fucking thing said here, because that's the only thing that you need to see. And the rain, it did add
There's a
rain.
couple
I'll
scenes
give it
with
that.
rain, but then like the scenes where like they go to buildings, it's just so obvious that this is Los Angeles. Like when they get, and also
Yeah.
the
Well,
names of things
exactly.
that they have are just hilarious. Like the Silver Cup Apartments, like in North Beacon
Yeah.
Hill. Like I live in Beacon Hill. There's nothing here near
Yeah.
that, and all the names of the streets that they have, it's just like, nope, that's
Yeah.
not a thing. And
Nope,
it's
that's
so
not a
funny
thing.
that like when they pull up and they,
It's
yeah,
like on
yeah, they
purpose
pull up and they
though.
get out of the car. It's just like that is not Seattle. That's Los Angeles, and it's so fun. It's so funny because yeah,
Exactly.
it's intentional, 100%.
Exactly. They make like movie mistakes on purpose. Like we noticed that last night with like there's like a scene where like there's like someone gets hit in the head or shot and there's blood on the wall. I think it turns out that it's like it's the end and it turns out it's Gabriel's imagination, but he's like there was blood on the wall in that scene and now there isn't. And I was like, yeah, well, give it a second. I think it either explains it or also it's kind of one of those things that like they do those on purpose just to kind of do whatever. And like the same thing with Seattle. Like they don't really care about making it
Yeah,
look like Seattle, except for the
yeah,
underground. I will give them that. But I was happy to like get Seattle in a good movie because I feel like it's had like a real image problem lately with like being a locale in a movie or like let alone a good thing. Cause I feel like since, The Ring was like early 2000s, I was like, not like, oh man, I'm gonna move there. But it was like, that I feel like that really represented like it looked like Seattle. It felt a little bit, I mean, it was creepy as fuck, but like it was a good movie. It was, set here. So
it did do some damage to the ferry
well, yeah.
business with that whole
Oh, don't
horse
even bring it
getting
up. I can't even think
destroyed.
about it. That's the one hang up I have on rewatching that movie. I mean, but also like the first time I watched it, I don't think I slept for like 24 hours. I'm pretty sure I was just like traumatized and I saw that fucking horse scene over and over. So anyways, after that, which is like, yeah, terrifying movie, but also like it was a good thing for Seattle. I felt then we just really after Grey's Anatomy, which, now is kind of fucked, but that's a good thing to associate it first with us. Then we get really into a downward spiral and it only gets worse after Twilight with which
Ugh.
yeah, I know it's Forks, but whatever. They go to Seattle once
It's
per
Seattle by
movie. Yeah.
association.
And it's
Yeah.
always I mean, they're just the worst. And then it gets 50 Shades of fucking Gray is the next one. And
Ugh.
that, oh man, I remember they shut down the fucking freeway like on I-90 or something for like
I
a
remember
day to
that.
film that movie and people were pissed. It wasn't like, oh, cool, they were shooting a movie. It was like, fuck 50 Shades of Grey. It was like the third one too. People were like, fuck those stupid ass movies. Like, I can't fucking, it's gonna take me 3 hours to get home because of fucking 50 Shades of Grey. That's not okay.
We got 3 movies of that bullshit.
And like 5 fucking Twilights. So that's what I'm saying. We were really due for like something good here. I feel like I can't think of a lot of others that maybe like there's smaller movies that are set here, but this was like, fuck yeah, Malignant. That's a great fucking movie, in my opinion. I think it's a good look for us that we're in a good movie. And James Wan, fuck yeah.
I did randomly get an email. This was a couple of years ago. I think this might have been during 2021. I got a couple random emails of thank you for renting 50 Shades of Grey. Thank you for renting 50 Shades Grey Darker. And I text my wife, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing with our Amazon? And she's like, sorry, you're out of town. I just decided to binge them all. And I'm like, you decided to binge these, all three of them. You couldn't find them streaming and couldn't illegally download them. We paid for these.
My mom was the same way. She made us go see them in theaters, if you can imagine. And I was like, Mom, the last movie I want to fucking see with you is 50 Shades of Grey. And she made me and my sisters go with her for each one. And I felt like it was like that scene in The Office when like they're like Phyllis is listening to 50 Shades of Grey audiobook in her headphones and they're like she's getting all horny and like she's like getting all like she's like humping on her chair and shit and like leaning over there getting all hot and they're like this is so upsetting. I can't be around for this. She's listening to porn.
And then Ed Helms takes it.
He's like, yeah, exactly. They pour the water on him. It's great. I'm just saying, like, that's how it felt going to see those movies, and I paid more for them in the theater, so I get your pain. It's upsetting, and this movie basically like saved us. We were on the brink of total failure, I think.
I will give him credit though. The house that she lives in looks like an old Seattle house, like in Queen
but
Queen
it's
Anne.
Huge, and there's like so much
It's
room
huge.
between properties.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm like, okay, this movie starts with you being a nurse and your husband, besides being a deadbeat and abuser, seems like he's unemployed because he's at home in the middle of the day, just like watching sports. Knowing how much things cost here in Seattle, I don't think this would work.
This is like she's also like,
and then he dies.
Rich, and her family has been paying for this. So this estate's been in the family for like 1,800 years. Yeah.
Like I'm going on a limb. Don't think he has a life insurance policy.
No, but of course he's unemployed. It's again another thing that you're like, this is from like us. This is like that first opening, 5-10 minutes with just her and the husband and the abuse and all that shit. Before it gets to like him being murdered by Gabriel or the spirit, whatever the fuck you think it is at that point. It's like literally I'm watching a soap opera or I'm watching like a Lifetime movie. That's the plot of like all of those fucking things. It's always, and then the female overcomes at the end. But that's like the fucking, that's so by the book and so like we've seen it before. But I think maybe people were just turned off by it. That they're like, oh God, I hate when these, oh wow, how original. But you're like, that's the point, jackass. I do like it that like there's so much unnecessary like things in movies where they have to explain shit, and it's nice when they don't. And you're like, I mean, granted, that comes at a price. Like I also feel like when we all want that, we also get Tenet, which I mean, I watched that twice, and I still don't think I've seen it. I don't know one thing that happens in that movie. I can't explain it.
I feel like I need to watch Tenet in just like a different state of mind every time, just to see if one of them clicks.
I can barely get Inception, and I feel like I still don't understand that fully. That like I just don't think I can handle any more Christopher Nolan movies. I think I'm just too dumb.
Maybe the beauty of Tenet is that if you watch it normal or in reverse, it's the same movie.
It hurts my head though. That's the upsetting part. And that's the thing. I don't know. Am I watching it in reverse already and I just don't know it? Like again, I have no idea about that movie, but I do feel like this movie also kind of has that fake out thing like a bunch of different times where you don't really know what's going on, but not to that extreme. It can be extreme, but this movie does it in more of like a low key way where it's like familiar at least until it's not.
It doesn't take itself seriously, where Tenet only takes itself seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume they did. I did not laugh once in that movie, except to say, I think I'm going insane because I don't understand a thing that anyone's saying.
So my next, this is not really a conversation, but this was like my second, this is a joke, this is your moment, is when they go to the police station after she sees Gabriel for the first time. And they show the police sketch, and it's exactly what Gabriel looks like.
How did they get that?
It's like imagine describing what this thing looks like, and then they draw it perfectly.
Exactly. Like, how the fuck do they know this? Also, with that, it's like the same thing, the same exact vibe when like they have that young picture of her and he like ages it up and it looks like exactly like her.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay. So, like, I just love that, like, those fucking face generators, if you really see them, like, I'm pretty sure they don't look that realistic. And I love that it just turns into, like, a picture of her. It's like, wow. And the same hairstyle, cut, everything. Like, nothing's different. It's just,
Yeah.
like, a fucking photo of her. It's so good. It's same kind of fucking humor there. They do it a lot, and it's just, like, I mean, I feel like they're not being subtle, right? Am I the only one who laughed at all this shit the
No.
first time?
Not at all. They're just like, yeah, our aging software also is predictive in what hairstyle you'll have based
And
off
it's like
the
literally
age
an outfit that she
we're
was wearing
determining.
earlier or something. Like I don't know, but it's just so good. It's hilarious. Again, you gotta just like how if you're this far into this movie, I'm sorry. I know you probably have figured it out by now, but clearly some people haven't. So come on.
For the people that are listening to this and they've watched the movie once and they weren't picking up, it's okay.
Go back and
It's
start over.
totally
It's
fine.
not
Go
okay.
back and watch it again. It is. It's
I'm
okay.
kidding.
This is a very unique movie. Go back and watch it again with all of this knowledge. You're gonna have a
Yeah,
great
we should.
time. It's
If anyone has a
wonderful.
problem with this on the second watch, like let's do a commentary because we'll walk you through it, baby. I would love to walk anybody through the world of Malignant and the fucking mind fuck that is.
Jesus. Well, we'll
Jesus.
Sherpa you through this without the mind fucking.
It's a
but
mind
like,
fuck.
okay.
I'm not literally gonna mind fuck anybody, but that does, it's a mind fuck. That means that this movie's insane.
So my
All
next
right,
point.
just fuck off. God.
So this is the second to last point before
Thank
the
God. No, I'm
moment.
just kidding.
Okay. So this is just this is my own personal laughing moment when the sister goes to the asylum to find the tapes. The scene where she parks the
Oh God,
Prius
yeah.
up to the edge of the cliff. I don't know why it's so funny, but I laugh my
I know
ass off.
exactly why
whenever
it's so funny. It's because
it's just
yeah.
like this wide shot and the Prius pulls up to the cliff.
It's hilarious because it's literally like gives me anxiety when I watch it because I'm like, oh my God, she's gonna fucking go off the cliff. But that's what's so funny is because it's like that's just a little oversight of like something that would be in a B movie of like we didn't have time to redo it. Or like redo that scene. We only got one shot, It's like we get one shot and then we're going. It's like the fucking Room, like that kind of a thing.
We filmed this in the parking lot and we green screened the whole thing.
We got
it's
one
hilarious.
Shot. That's all we have. Okay, so let's just do the best.
We pulled Kurt's Prius up to a 7-Eleven and we just green screened it and it was awesome.
It's hilarious if you have a sense of humor. I feel if you're not laughing at that, I question what you. I mean, I love stupid jokes. Like, there's no stupid joke that doesn't get by me without a good chuckle. I fucking love stupid jokes, but I like good jokes too. But I'm just saying this movie might not be the most sophisticated thing ever, but like that's what I love about it. It's because there's something to be said for things that are not sophisticated at all, right?
I think the amount of thought that's put into this movie makes it the worst sophisticated joke ever made. Like, it's so thought out and intentional, similar to like Swiss Army Man. Like, this movie is so like thought out and intentional that it can be the dumbest thing you've ever seen or incredible.
And I think those are the movies that really like work the best. And they're like they might be simple or seem simple, but it's like if it's simplistic, it's because maybe you're seeing it that way. But then if you want to see it as more complex, you can really analyze a lot of different stuff.
My last little thing. This is the final red flag of like, if you haven't gotten the joke yet, it's on you from now on. Okay. It's when the sister she's finding the videotapes in the hospital. Then Madison is in the prison. Remember, we are allegedly in Seattle. The prison is filled with people. They're not in Seattle. Like, there's disco person, there's trailer park girl. Like,
they just look like they're picked up from like they're totally supposed to look like just like they're
other horror movie
but
people.
also like they don't belong. Like, this isn't real, which it is. That part
is part of the
it's
joke.
The joke because she thinks that she's just still sitting in this jail cell the whole time, but then when she's in the jail cell and you get the whole they start beating the shit out of her, then it like lines up with the sister watching the videotapes of her as a kid, and that's when you get your big reveal.
Yeah, that's when we get to the point where the movie takes a Tokyo drift into
Literally.
another genre. And
Yeah.
oh my God, it's maybe like one of my favorite movie watching experiences when this movie changes.
It's
Because like
incredible.
the first time I watched it, I'm just like, this is kind of weird. Like, there's some really great stuff. Like, there's some James Wan stuff, but like this movie is kind of weird. And then that happens, and it becomes just like one of the best moments of my life.
Yeah,
Just
it's like that's when
ex-
you're like,
oh my God, this is all a
okay,
joke.
because you're
Okay.
laughing at it already, but you're also like, I feel like I shouldn't be laughing at it. Like I feel bad because I'm like, man, I really like James Wan and he's doing so much right. I get why people were like, I don't get this movie, but I think they just think it was like totally serious, and then it becomes like The Matrix mixed with like fucking like the Matrix fighting. Like there's like a whole Matrix fight scene in a police station that is just incredible right after the jail sequence, which is more like
Well,
horrific because it's like gore and shit like that, but it's also like fucking insane.
Well, even before that, I'm saying for me, the moment that this movie changes is when it shows
Gabriel,
the found footage
the
where
old
they're like, "Let's
videotape.
go," and then and then they show Gabriel on literally the back of
No,
her
it's
head.
upsetting when they do the actual creature reveal. For me, I feel like that's like horrifying, but it's like I expect something like creature, weird fuck like that, and it's funny, but it's also horrifying.
It,
But I feel like what really seals the deal for me is the Gabriel action sequence in the jail cell. That's the part for me that I'm like,
oh,
that's when this movie is like it all comes together. But I do feel like that also that scene was like, what the fuck? That is, I mean, I've seen some fucking shit about like they have like I've seen like Siamese twins or like ones where they do have like the parasitic twin. Not like this fucking shit. It is horrifying. And he's got those little like little arms it's like punching out. Oh, it's upsetting to look at. It's worse than like the little Voldemort guy when he's all creepy and little like in that fourth movie or something.
totally,
Totally a
totally,
similar
or like
energy.
the first Harry
Yeah,
Potter movie when
the back
it's
of the
just the
head.
back of his head, like it's
The
and
back of her
this
head, what does it look like without like, once they take Gabriel out in that scene, I wanted to see the scarring because it can't be just smooth back there. It's gotta be a
well,
fucking nightmare. That's what's hilarious about it.
that's part of the
Yeah,
B
like, they
plot.
don't
Like, they
explain
don't
it, like, no
explain it.
oh,
Like,
her husband was like, "Why do you look like Frankenstein on your back?" Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's gotta be insane
yeah,
back there. And I mean, he's beating the shit out of her. He probably had seen her back, I would guess. Allegedly. I mean, he
allegedly.
got her pregnant how many times too? This guy would have noticed that. He would have been like, "Who did this to you? I'm gonna fuck him up."
Well, it depends on if he's Protestant or
Oh, that's right.
Catholic.
Good point. But
You
I
know,
just feel like, yeah, that's what's
denominations
you
determine
can yeah.
positions. It's a key fact
True
of
that, and, you're right, actually, and it's funny because I just feel like, yeah, this movie would be, like it's so absurd that it works, though, like, it makes it all come
oh yeah.
together weirdly because I feel like, yeah, the first time you watch it, you're like, "I'm watching this for James Wan," or because I like The Conjuring or those, kinda horror movies, but it's like, then this is the point when you realize, like, "Oh, this is great. This is something totally unexpected, but I'm like, you're either here for it or not. I feel like that's why is it's a hard left turn, like you said. And it's like you're either
Yeah.
with them or like they lost you. You fell out of the car or whatever. Like you're gone.
If you are a big horror fan, like you might have noticed these weird things, and then when this happens, you're like, "Oh,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
joke. Let's have fun." Where if you just thought it was weird, but like you didn't kind of see it, it might just be like, what is going on? What?
People who understand horror movies, I feel like they still were also the ones who like didn't really love it. And I think maybe it just takes a certain type of humor as well, or like a certain kind of love for those kind of movies.
Or a couple of rewatches
Yeah, or
because
maybe you just need to see it a few times.
I can't think of a movie like
No, not at
Malignant.
all. I mean, if you watch the
Like,
trailer, you think, "Oh, yeah, I could." But no.
yeah,
There's no movie quite like it that's shocking and takes a left
yeah.
turn like that, at least that I've seen.
So yeah, like I feel like the moment where they show Gabriel, that is the last moment. This is the James Wan telling you, if you aren't laughing yet, you're not gonna have a good time.
It's like that or
Because
either like
because then it
yeah.
just gets
I would say the
insane.
chair throwing scene. Like when Gabriel throws the chair across the room and hits the 2 detectives and they go down. I fucking think that's the funniest thing I've seen in a movie in a long time. Like that's fucking hilarious. If you're not laughing at that point, you clearly have you've come too far and you don't understand it. You need to go back and start at the beginning. There's a lot of those points, but I do feel like that's the final one where they're like, "Okay, if you're like I feel like people should I didn't see it in the theater, so I wish I could tell if people were, like, getting it or not, because I would have been
Oh
laughing
yeah.
out loud. I watched this at home, and I had the fucking best time ever. It was amazing.
We were laughing our asses off that whole final sequence. Also, like the in the cell thing happens where they just kill
She just
everyone. Like that's
Gabriel
first,
just takes everybody down, and the transformation is so gross, but it's so good. It's so great.
and also the contortionists in that are
Yeah.
incredible. Like
Fighting
they
backwards.
don't do any
Yeah.
CGI. They're just like killing all of them, and it's hilarious and gruesome. It's just it checks all the boxes. And then when they bust into the police station, it's like a John Wick scene, and even like the behind the scenes footage, like they have the big robot camera that tracks them, and they talk about how like this is a extremely like choreographed thing, because if you don't do something wrong, you're gonna have a giant robot running you over. Like,
I
and
gotta
like
watch
those
all that
scenes
stuff
are
now.
awesome.
I think I've watched
Oh,
it a
it
long time ago, but, like, I'd watched it when it came out, and I just feel like I've forgotten all of it, and I wanna rewatch it again, but when you're saying that, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, fuck."
well,
So
like
good.
the scene where Gabriel busts in and just starts killing all the cops, and you get like the close up of the
Yeah.
knife and stuff, like that's all a robotic camera
Mhm.
drone that's following
It's
the
insane.
actors. And like they had to choreograph all this stuff because this camera is acting totally autonomous. It just was programmed to do these
So
certain
cool.
movements, and so you have to line it up with that. And like that action scene is awesome.
Incredible. Unexpected in a horror movie. Like, sometimes they don't usually have the best action sequences. It's more like jump scares and shit like that and creepy shit. It's like a fucking great action scene like that belongs in like fucking, I don't know, any number of action movies that is not Malignant. That is why this movie is like a fucking enigma.
the last the last 15 minutes, nothing prepares you for what's about to happen.
Nothing at
For the
all.
last 15 minutes. That's why it's the greatest long
That's
con of all
yeah, it's like
time. Like,
I said earlier that it starts the same way as the dark half. I will say it just not at all end like the fucking dark half where like his evil twin thing comes to life and starts killing people too, but my god, it doesn't look like Gabriel and it does not do exact like anything like what Gabriel fucking does. The contortionist alone, it's an amazing action sequence. It is on par with like some of the shit that's in the Matrix, but it's just really
yeah.
disturbing. Like they show a lot of breaking and bones and like knives to the face and like just fucked up shit. Like Gabriel really takes everybody out. Those two detectives are pretty fucking lucky that they're even trying to get away with it. And he just throws the chair and knocks them both on their fucking asses. And it's so good. But it's also like
The
they're fucking lucky. Everybody else got fucking skewered through the face or like ripped in half or something. And they just got like, they each got like lightly stabbed. I mean, I loved it.
the throwing of the chair is like
It's like a WWE moment. It's amazing.
top 5 funniest, like loudest I've ever laughed watching a movie moments ever.
A cheer-worthy moment, I think, and it's a chair-worthy moment if you think about it, but I was cheering for that fucking chair, I will say that, and I just think,
Yeah.
like, that's why I was like, Gabriel might be my new favorite horror villain, man. He's got the fucking moves. His moves in this whole sequence are just incredible, and the fact that he's doing it backwards, I mean, I love it.
This is really where the movie ends.
Yeah, they have an ending, but that's, like, the last thing that's, like, amazing.
Yeah, like they have to end the movie. They end the movie. It's fine. There's a nod to maybe there's a sequel. I hope there's never a sequel. But like really, this movie ends with that police station sequence because it's just
Yeah,
incredible. And that chair throwing scene is just like if I could have a GIF tattooed on my body, it would be that.
literally. I mean, that is just like, but I also, just was thinking about The Thing when I watched this movie again because I'm like, I think this movie also bombed like when it first came out. Like The Thing, nobody was either into it at the time or they just didn't get it.
Yeah, the thing I pulled it up right now. The budget for this movie was about 15
Mhm.
million and worldwide it grossed 19
Yeah.
million. That's a
That's a bomb.
bomb.
And people but now it's like we all agree it's like the number one, like it's the best. We all agree it's probably the best horror remake of all time, but I think we also like everyone just agrees it's just one of the best plain horror films of all time. It's incredible. And it has a very simple plot. And the creature thing, I mean, it happens a lot earlier in the movie. I'll give them that. And then it becomes like that, like every 20 minutes, maybe 10 that there's those scenes. But it's so incredible. Like what they're doing and that the fact that now people love that movie. I think maybe Malignant will be that way where people didn't get it first time they watched it or maybe it just wasn't the right time. I even think if it came out this year honestly it would have had a better shot because a lot of horror movies have been original lately and we've gotten a lot of really good horror. I think this would be a good year for it. I think it maybe it needs another 20, 30 years and people will think it's like one of the greatest of all time.
I was gonna ask you if this movie came out this year out of the lockdown, would it change the outcome
I
of it?
think so. Do you?
I think it maybe would have made more money at the box office,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it would have been received as well.
Really? I think like this may be the same thing with The Thing. I mean, I know that there was like a lot of shit going down like at that point in history. I'm not a fucking historian, so I'm not going to try and say it because I know it's going to be wrong. It came out in the early 80s. There was shit going on, maybe communism, fuck if I know, Russia, all that shit. It was like a lot going on. People were really stressed. They didn't want this like nihilistic kind of a movie where like it was also very absurd and very like crazy, but also like, it just kind of ends on a sour note. Didn't hit at the right time. Nowadays, people are like, I love that shit. I want more of that stuff, right? We don't want horror movies to play it safe. It's cool when they do something different. So it's interesting to see,
Mhm.
like, obviously, I don't think Malignant will have a similar effect as like The Thing. Unfortunately, I mean, I can't believe that that was held against John Carpenter for so long because I mean, he should be celebrated for that fucking thing. It's incredible. It's
Yeah,
amazing. So I hope
yeah.
that, I know James Wan will be fine, but I just hope that we could get more movies like this because it's fucking awesome. And maybe people just need to fucking cool it on hating everything before thinking about it, you know?
Because it was just like a straight to HBO thing. It's like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Let me do Aquaman too. Like we'll be fine. But like this movie is incredible and it deserves to be a cult classic. And it even kind of has a cult following.
Oh yeah. Like yeah, so one of my favorite things about Malignant is that like the Malignant Hive, hashtag Malignant Hive is very
I love
active
this.
and like the chair throwing gif is like ever present. That I feel like I don't know who exactly started this whole thing with trying to get it into the Oscars fan favorite. I want to say Fangoria.
So wait, before we jump into this, for the people who didn't know, I don't know, but the Oscars was this the
No,
2021?
2022 Oscars, the most recent ones.
They did a new thing. The Oscars doing a new thing. I know it's super weird. They did a fan voted
Fan favorite on Twitter hashtags.
greatest scene of all
No, no,
time.
no, no. They should have. It would have won. No, it was best like the fan favorite movie of the year. So it was like what because the movies that made the most money never get nominated for
Yeah.
Oscars. So this was the Oscars like cuz they used to they did say they were going to do a popular movie category, but then there was a lot of backlash so they took that out. So they're like, "We'll do the fan favorites." So then they didn't think about like Twitter bots and shit like that. So they were like people hashtag the Oscars fan favorite and submit your votes. And then based on the amount of people tweeting that hashtag using whatever movie, they basically had finalists. and Malignant made it to the top 5 and was on like the TV at the Oscars because of the Malignant Hive. It was Malignant Hive Activate was consistently thrown around. And I do think I think Fangoria was the one that tried to get all the horror fans into it. And I think we all just really ran with it because Malignant does nothing if it doesn't inspire a lot of fucking love and passion. And I think we all showed that because unfortunately the movie that won was of course the fucking Zack Snyder movie, the zombie one. Whatever
Was it Army of the
Army of the
Dead?
Dead one because they love Zack Snyder, I think. I think that was
That
what
movie
won.
was that movie was fine.
Yeah, but it was like all the Zack Snyder fans are so like on Twitter all the time yelling about
They're,
things. So
they're
they
insane.
voted
They're
it into
insane.
it. Like Spider-Man No Way Home should have won because I'm pretty sure it made the most money. It was probably the one that most people loved, but like also those fans weren't super active on Twitter. Like Johnny Depp's movie got in there too because his fans are like obsessed with him. I voted for Malignant, I will say. I do love Johnny Depp, but I did vote for Malignant.
But I remember you telling me that the way that the Malignant Hive activated was people just sending that tweet with the hashtag, but then with the GIF of the chair
Oh,
throwing.
yeah, that was included most of the time. Like if you go to any of those threads or just if you go look up Malignant Hive, you will see quite a bit of it's mostly Gabriel gifts pretty much because I mean it's also just fucking sick choreography. I mean first off, but tell me that throwing gif, like throwing the chair, is just perfection because it's also like I love that it shows the wind up, the throw, and then the hit because that's what you got. It's
Yeah.
like a longer one, but it's fucking perfection. And I just got to say, shout out to everybody who loves Malignant. You guys made it like awesome, and I feel like that's like only going to grow with time. So I'm very happy that we can be like on the forefront of being like, yeah, fucking Malignant rules.